This episode is proudly supported by Crunch. Running a hospitality business isn't for the faint-hearted. Between ordering stock, scheduling rosters, paying bills, motivating your team, and keeping customers happy, there's a lot on your plate. It's no surprise that business planning often gets put on the back burner. Well, here's something that can help. Introducing Crunch, a new app to help simplify the business side of hospo. With Crunch, you get access to practical, bite-sized education, proven strategies, and a supportive community of hospo owners just like you. When it comes to the Crunch, if you're looking for proven ways to build a successful, sustainable business, Crunch has you covered. Try Crunch now. To get 14 days free, just head to crunchhospo.com.au.
The processes of the kitchen actually mirror, in a way, aspects of our lives, trying and failing, heating and searing, defrosting or throwing out if they're no good. I think all of those parallels are actually very, very strong.
Hey there, everybody. It is Dani Valent here with you for Dirty Linen. As always, I am super appreciative and excited to be in your ears, having a chat about food. Today, I feel, is going to be a good one. I first remember listening to Virginia Trioli on ABC Radio Melbourne when it was still called 774 and she was doing afternoons. It's one of the earliest times I remember really listening to radio that wasn't a football broadcast. That idea of live storytelling, carrying a city through its celebrations and its sadnesses, and asking questions that were sometimes cosy and sometimes very pointed of the guests. Anyway, Virginia Trioli is a two-time Walkley-winning journalist. She's the host of ABC TV's Creative Types and a former host on News Breakfast and Q&A, as well as ABC Melbourne. But we find her today in a different mode as author. Her memoir, A Bit on the Side, is a lovely pink hardcover book, a series of reflections on what makes life delicious. VT, welcome.
Oh, Dani, so happy to be here. Hello.
Hello. I'm actually, as I was getting as me and my dog were getting ready for this interview, I was feeling a bit nervous. I was thinking, I'm interviewing one of the best interviewers in the country. What is it like for you to have the tables turned?
Yeah, well, I can tell you to relax because that apparent best interviewer is sitting here nervous as a kitten going, oh, shit, now I have to answer the questions. So don't worry about it. You have me at a disadvantage. Go for it.
Well, I suppose your advantage is that I love the book. I reckon I'm about halfway through, which means I've just got past the chapter about salad dressing, which we will definitely come back to. But I've started the chapter called I Blame Andrew McConnell. I know there's a fire brigade involved, but I don't know what the chapter's about. We'll put in a quick spoiler alert, but can you tell me what you blame this great Melbourne chef for?
Okay, spoiler alert, because it is, I think, a rather good tale. And if you want it told as it is in the book, you can just, go forward a few minutes and join us later on. But the book itself is, as you say, a memoir, and it takes the conceit and the idea, both the actual and the metaphorical, of the idea of the side dish or the dressing or the sauce or the bit of extra, as the idea is the thing that really brings the joy, not the main course, but actually all the little bits on the side. And I'd woken one morning with it, and this is usually how most of my days go, Dani, where I go to bed thinking about what I'm going to eat the next day, and then I wake up thinking about what I want to have for dinner. And I just had this absolute hankering for a proper pepper steak, but with the classic pepper steak sauce, which is really very simple. It's just the pan juices, some cream, a flash of cognac, and of course the peppercorns left over that that's fallen off really after you've crushed them into the steak itself. Anyway, long story, which I hope is well told in the book, but basically I suspect that maybe I don't think I used too much cognac. Maybe what I used maybe it was a different proof level to what was Andrew McConnell's recipe via his butcher Meatsmith was suggesting to us to use. But I sent up a shot of flame from the pan straight up into the range hood and into the fan extraction of the range hood that sucked the flame up into the range hood and basically set the range hood on fire, and with a wave of thick black smoke curling out the top of it that then blew out the entire power of the house.
Oh my goodness.
And so this pepper steak, and it took months to get the house rewired, to get all the circuits working again, to get the range hood replaced. Then we broke the splashback upon putting the new range in, and so the splashback had to be replaced. Months and months and thousands of dollars in order to make what turned out to be a really beautiful pepper steak, but eaten in the dark and the cold of a burnt-out kitchen and a burnt-out house in the middle of a Melbourne winter.
Oh, well, that is a great story, and your telling of it has certainly not stopped me from wanting to read it myself, and perhaps to find the recipe at the end, because that's the structure of the book. Perhaps tell us a little bit about your motivation in writing it, and also you're such, as I've learned through reading it, you're such a fan of food writing, like you are in awe of some of the great food writers of the world. What has it been like to, I guess, put yourself in their company to some extent?
Oh, it's been wonderful. I mean, I'm a very big collector of food writing and cookbooks and all the way back through history and through unfashionable periods of history and even forgotten periods of food history. And I've collected those books and I dip back in and out of them. I like to be a very broad and curious cook. I don't like being captive to fashion, and so only staying with, these 5 cookbooks that we all buy right now and we all cook from. I like those as well, but I mix them into the other books that I have. And so I spent a good year and a bit delving back into those and many, many other cookbooks and reading about how people told their stories about food, recipes that meant a lot to me, recipes that I half remembered and needed to track down to see if, I was remembering them correctly and why I loved them so much. And it was just been a glorious, happy time, spending time with very old food writing and very new and recent and contemporary food writing, and to find that the thing we all have in common is the flash of joy that a really great dish prepared well for people you care about, how that can come into your life and what that brings to you. So that's kind of the connective tissue, if you like, between really centuries of cooking and writing. Some of it goes back to the 1700s that I'm quoting, but it's not a nerdy book. I mean, it actually is about. It really is a book of lived experience, and you're right, it is a memoir, because that idea of the little spoonful of extra, or the delicious thing left behind at the bottom of the plate, it really has been for me sort of a defining principle, really, of what life has turned into and how we're all managing to find happiness and joy in our life right now, when, frankly, Dani, a lot of the big picture is really rubbish. If you stand back and look at the big picture, the main course, as it were, it's not good. So all you can do are find those little moments of joy instead.
Yeah, I mean, that's really poignant. And I suppose in some ways that it turns this into somewhat of an advice book, although it certainly doesn't read self-help at all, unless perhaps, there's the help in making a perfect salad dressing or perhaps a great béarnaise. And on the small but important joy of dipping a chip into something delicious, tell me about you and béarnaise.
Oh, well, the chapter, I think it sort of probably all began, this book, with béarnaise. I mean, I have a long love affair with sauce béarnaise, which has a rich and lovely history. And also in the city where you and I are, Dani, there are a couple of restaurants, and one in particular where a sauce boat of sauce béarnaise, when that comes to the table, it's just the crowning moment of a great restaurant that's been going for decades now, that all of us adore, and that's Francois in South Yarra, which has been doing its thing straightforward, beautifully prepared French cooking with wonderfully sourced ingredients for so long now. And so the steak béarnaise I first had there as a young, flirtatious woman who was starting to have a bit of a romance with a bloke who has stayed a very good friend of mine ever since. And I've been going there ever since for that great steak béarnaise, but of course, and then the frit that come with it. And you just sit there and you pick up one of those crisp, thin, piping hot chips and you swirl it around in the sauce boat of béarnaise and pop that in your mouth, and really, it doesn't matter if the world ends tomorrow because that's kind of good enough.
I mean, I think you're clearly a more than competent home cook, but there is such a love of restaurants threaded through this book. And you are, I guess, talking about some formative experiences eating in different places around the world. But I do love your trip into the Francois kitchen. Like, talk to me about the differences that you perceive between the world of the chef and the world of the home cook.
Well, it was a rare and really, much yearned for experience to actually get through that swing door, because I've been, lucky enough to sit in that restaurant many, many times for family celebrations and big moments and sometimes just stolen moments, sitting up at the bar with a glass of champagne and an oyster when you can afford it. But to get in there and to actually enter not only the very serious and well-organised mind of the, commercial chef who has a job to do, who's got, several hundred covers that they're going to have to take care of through the day, and make sure that they do it efficiently, well, with no waste, and to be up close to that mindset and to take away certain qualities then into your little home kitchen is a really great experience, because they have the trick. They've got the knack. I mean, it's interesting you were talking about me on Drive Radio all those years ago, Dani, and I know you were listening, and I'm very glad that you were, because one of my favourite segments that I had regularly on that radio, on Drive, on ABC Melbourne 774 back then, was a little segment called The Knack. And that's where I got on people who were then baby chefs, just emerging chefs in Melbourne, newcomers who really didn't amount to much, like Shannon Bennett and, Andrew McConnell and Katerina Borzato and people like that, and, Brigitte Hafner. And they'd come on and they'd share with us the trick, the knack of a well-known recipe, or a recipe that sort of, everyone should be able to make, whether it be like some kind of a sauce or deep frying fish or something like that. And they were so generous with their knowledge, and it was brilliant spending time with people who had the knowledge, knew how to do it, at a very elevated commercial level, but could also pass it over to you in a domestic setting. And that's what that experience being there with Gerard Faure was like when he was taking me through making a sauce béarnaise. But of course, he was dealing with quantities in the litres and butter in the kilograms. But I do have a recipe in there for one that will work for you at home for just 6 portions.
I love it. You quote a lot of different food writers, and I love your quote from Victor Hazan about the invisibility of cooking. That really made me stop and think. I haven't actually read him. It made me think of a restaurant I've eaten at recently in Melbourne called Carnation Canteen. I'm not sure if you've had a chance to go there.
I haven't. I've heard of it, but I've not gone there.
Well, I feel like the invisibility of cooking is what happens there. Like ingredients, when I wrote about it, I wrote about ingredients just sort of dancing through the kitchen on, pointed toes almost, just twirling, and there's a little touch of butter and heat and acid that, just tickles them as they go through. And I thought it was such a lovely term. I mean, what does that mean to you, that sort of, that lightness of touch?
That lightness of touch, and I'm quoting Victor Hazan, who was the husband of Marcella Hazan, of course, the great celebrated breakthrough Italian chef and cookbook writer, who really did teach a generation of people around the world how to cook classical, elegant Italian food. And he was referring there to the kind of food that he found in a beautiful, beautiful little restaurant, which still exists in Venice, called da Fiore, Osteria da Fiore, which is in Sao Paulo. And you can still go there. And if you plan to go to Venice, book early, get yourself a table. It'll be a bit expensive, but it won't be horrific. It's not a Michelin-starred place. And that was where years ago, under the original owners, and it's now operated by the original owner's son, he tasted this pure, restrained, beautiful Venetian cooking, which was about the invisibility of the process and all about the ingredient. And I mean, we hear about that a lot. It's a conversation maybe for another time, Dani, and I'd love to have it with you, where I think that concept has actually been misrepresented, where it's all about the ingredient and we just celebrate the ingredient. The ingredient's the hero. Except when you look at the recipe or you look at what's on your plate, there's actually a hell of a lot going on. And sometimes I think in rather contraindicating and contradictory ways, ingredients that maybe shouldn't be put together or processes that are a bit too overwrought for what you're doing. But this kind of cooking that Victor Hazan was talking about and that I really revere is genuinely that. And as you say, just a touch of heat, a touch of acid, a touch of fat, that ingredient and a proper understanding of how they work together. And it just elevates the whole. And something quite bright happens when you place that in your mouth. And that's beautiful, proper, restrained Venetian cooking for me, but also the kind of cooking that I most enjoy.
People who cook for you, sometimes they're on a precipice and they may not even know it. Tell us about Russell, your now husband, cooking eggplant for you in Tokyo.
Well, I had met him when I was a journalist at The Age and he was an editor at The Age. And we met. And it was, a thunderbolt. It was one of those moments where after I'd met him and talked to him for an hour and I walked away thinking, oh dear, I'm in trouble. I'm absolutely in trouble now. I think I'm gone. And that was it. That's all it took. But he was heading off overseas to become our Southeast Asian, meaning The Age's Southeast Asian correspondent based in Tokyo. But our feelings for each other didn't diminish, even though he'd gone. So I went over to Tokyo to meet up with him for a little holiday. And after my big first day in Tokyo, and if you've ever been, you know what your first day in Tokyo is like. At the end of it, you are just destroyed, in the most overwhelmed and hyper excited and multi-stimulated way, because you've eaten everything, you've seen everything, you've been in this astonishing culture that's ugly and beautiful and brutal and elegant and restrained all at the same time. And we got home at God knows what hour. It was January. It was freezing cold. And he said, I want to cook eggplant for you. And I thought, oh, no, this is a disaster, for one of two reasons. Either this man does not know that if you're going to prepare eggplant properly, you have to peel it, cut it, salt it, drain it, rinse it, blot it, and then cook it. And therefore, I'm not getting dinner, for hours and hours and hours, and I'm hungry. Or he doesn't know that, and then I can't see this man ever again. So either of those two outcomes were not good, because one was either he was an idiot and he didn't know how to treat an eggplant well, and I couldn't possibly be with a man who didn't know that, or it was going to take hours. And, of course, he did. He knew exactly how to treat the eggplant, and he prepared the most delicious dish by a celebrated Italian cookbook author called Giuliano Bugiali. And he brought out the book and he said, I'm cooking from this. And I looked at the book, and it's a book that I had at home. And nobody I'd ever met had that book. No one else. I thought it was just me. I was the only person in the world who owned that book, because I'd never seen it on anybody else's shelves. And he had it. And I'd never made that dish before. And he made it for me, and it was absolutely delicious. And bang, that was it. Gone for all money.
I really love it. And I mean, it is a book that I guess circles around food. Food is a thread, but you do get pretty personal in this book and talk about, this grand love in your life. You talk about being a stepmom, and you talk a little bit about your fertility journey. I mean, what's it like for you to be this open on the page?
It's a good question because it's something that I've resisted for a long time. And my one other book that I've published was a long, long time ago now. And that was my response to Helen Garner's First Stone, which was part of a big, big national conversation at the time. And I remember a friend of mine reading it many years later because he didn't know that I'd read it. And he read it and he said, I like it, it's good. He said, but I would have loved much more of you in there. And I remember looking at him thinking, no way, that's not what that book was. This book's not about me, and I don't put myself at the centre of it. And I ask the questions, thank you. And it's taken me a long time to get comfortable with that. But it's funny, when it comes, it comes. And when the idea of this book came to me, I knew that the only way I could make the points and tell the stories that I wanted to tell, and also connect to readers in the way that I know this idea will connect, was to be self-revealing and to talk about myself. And that's taken a long time. Many years of being on radio, which, as you have already said, is a very intimate place to be. It's a very connected community. It's where you go to hear very personal stories and where you have to be vulnerable and self-revealing. So I have to say the writing of it was really joyous. I didn't resist that at all. I didn't struggle with it. I just knew exactly what I wanted to tell. I knew that it's about telling personal stories that aren't just personal for the sake of it, that aren't just sort of, personally invasive for their own sake. They have to have a reason that will connect to a reader. So they've got to be stories where you know that readers will have some understanding or connection or parallel experience with. And so actually it was a really joyous thing to do, and I feel like it's sort of turned me taken me to the next level of being, the writer that I want to be.
Oh, that's so exciting. So where does it take you? What do you have a next thing in mind already?
Yes, there's 5 more things in mind that I haven't really done. No, it's funny. It just sort of, a couple of things happened. I stepped back from daily broadcasting, and I've done, decades of daily unscripted broadcasting, radio, breakfast television. I was the founding anchor of News Breakfast. I was on that for 11 years, live without a net. All the worst and best news stories of the world just coming at you day after day after day. And I don't do that anymore. I now do Creative Types, which is such a joyous, place to be, talking to some of our most distinctive and prolific creative Australians. Stepping back from that, doing a show like that and writing this book, I feel like a door in me has just flung open, and there are now 5 books in there just clamouring to get out. So, yeah, it feels like a really creative time for me as well.
Oh, I'm excited to read them all. So, yeah, get on with writing them.
Yeah, just find me some time, Dani.
Yeah,
find
all
me
right.
some time.
I'll see if I can handball you some.
Thank you.
You talk about the kitchen as holding memories, and I wonder how you think it does that, and also, does it hold them safely?
That's a really good question. I think it absolutely does. And I think all the many kitchens, plural, of our lives hold those memories, good or bad. Whether it be that rude share house kitchen that you had with mates where you first moved out that was, unheated and with a shit refrigerator and you're buying food very cheaply. There are particular memories there. Or it's your family kitchen, whether your family was a happy and safe place or not. I think it does hold memory really powerfully because it's a place of making. And wherever you spend serious, concentrated time making something, whether it's successful or not, is immediately creating a foundational memory. And more than that, you're making food, which is the most connecting thing when it comes to memory and recall and also bringing memories back from the past. So I think it's all of those things. I think the processes of the kitchen actually mirror, in a way, aspects of our lives, trying and failing, heating and searing, defrosting or throwing out if they're no good. I think all of those parallels are actually very, very strong with the really impacting experiences of our lives. So kitchens are really very comfortable places for me. They're places of hard work. I always call our little kitchen here, where we live in North Melbourne, the hardest working kitchen in Melbourne. I don't think the oven's ever been turned off. It just goes and goes and goes. When we built it about 24 years ago now, we built on a funny old abandoned block of land here, and I remember I wanted to have marble benches, and many people said to me, "Oh, marble benches, they stain, they crack, they discolour," and I thought, yeah, of course they do, and I wanted to. There's the history. That's the great thing about that beautiful. It's almost like a living stone. It's so porous and so alive under your hand, and this marble bench of ours has the history of every single thing I've made on it, including all the dings on the side where I've pulled out the heavy cast iron pot too roughly and, cracked the side of the counter, and there's a big chip missing, and that's fine too. So I love how a kitchen has many, many different nooks and crannies to hold lots of different memories.
I love that. And when you said defrosting, that really, I'm going to have to think about that, because I think that the analogies around that are, yes, worth pondering. And you also made me think of that part in the book. I think it was around your Easter gatherings where you had two Bialetti pots that were working furiously. I feel like so many people would be able to relate to that. Just, the hiss of steam and the urgent bubble, and just these really beautifully designed, reliable little friends that we can have alongside us.
Oh, it's so true. And I always get such a thrill when the recipe calls for a particular bit of kit that maybe I haven't used in a long time. And I'll think, oh, great, that little whisk. I love that whisk. That whisk works so well, and I need it for this sauce. Or I have this tiny little Bakelite grater. It's a little, really like the size of a matchbox, but with curved sides. So it's like a little dish with the grating spikes at the bottom. It's Japanese, of course. I got it from one of my many trips to Tokyo. And it's only for grating nutmegs. And you just put a nutmeg in, you just shave it backwards and forwards really quickly, zzz, and before you know it, you've got this little bowl, little tray full of that, beautiful, fragrant brown dust. And it's just a delight. I don't get to grate nutmeg very often, maybe for the bechamel, maybe for the custard or whatever, or for the cake. But whenever I do, and you bring out that lovely bit of kit, I am taken back to that fabulous big. It's not there anymore because Skiji Market, of course, has been closed down and moved in Tokyo. But there was a huge, big, crockery shop, a shop full of kitchen implements right near Skiji Market. And I'm taken back there every time I pull it out and use it. So, yeah, memories in everything.
Oh, I'm a bit jealous of that grater, because if I grate nutmeg, it's on like the bottom bit of a pyramid-shaped box grater, and I'm mainly grating my knuckles. So
exactly. No, we've got to fix this. I'm going to see if I ever see one. If I ever see one similar to this, I'm buying it for you, Dani. It is a delightful little thing. It lives in my spice cupboard with the little jar of nutmegs next to it. And I imagine in there sort of sitting there, rather dolefully thinking, my day will come. I'll be pulled out soon. It's not often. It's only every now and again I get pulled out, but I'll get pulled out again.
Yes, and I will be special when I'm there,
right,
out in the light. I love your description of your scrapbooks that you started putting together as a child, and I reckon like fresh scrapbooks are probably pretty rare creatures these days. Do you think that changes the journey of finding oneself as a cook?
Oh, I think it absolutely does. And I've got a record of it. It's amazing. So I started scrapbooks when I was really young. And it's funny, they're sitting right here next to me in my studies. I'm talking to you. And they were those classic old-fashioned scrapbooks with the really bad quality, coarse, really heavy, coarse, sort of almost yellowy paper in them. And I just cut out and clipped recipes that I loved from all the magazines that our neighbour sent to us over the fence once she finished reading them, the Women's Days and the Women's Weeklies and all of that. So it's all of Margaret Fulton stuff, and it's the Great Women's Weekly Test Kitchen. And you can see in there the things that fascinated me and the things that I guess didn't include, and the things that I put a priority on. The Women's Weekly often had what they called the dinner party of the month, which was a dinner party menu. So you got, the entree, the main course, the side dishes and dessert. And I pulled out all of those and stuck those in a 2-page spread in my scrapbook. And it's so interesting to me because I cook for friends a lot. I cook, every day here if Russell's not cooking for dinner. And a well-constructed, I don't call them dinner parties anymore, but we did back then, just, dinner for friends, is really important to me, to get the contrasts right and the textures right to make sure that the dishes work together, that, what people might want is there, what might surprise people is there. And so, yes, you do see the beginnings of an early cook. But don't you think people would still have to have scrapbooks, Dani? Because, recipes are still published everywhere, right? And they're in magazines and they're in newspapers. And, I imagine that people have to clip them out because I still do. I still clip them.
Oh, look, I think so many people are just Googling their recipes and not bookmarking them and cooking them once, and if they work, great, and if they don't, oh well. I just don't know if people are archiving as much as they used to. I think everything seems a little bit more temporary. I suppose cookbooks are being, there's no shortage of new cookbooks, and cookbooks are certainly being bought, but I think the average, and I don't know who's done this study, but what I've heard is that the average number of recipes cooked out of a book is 0, and that if you get to 2, then that's considered a pretty well-used book. So it's, listeners, please tell us, how are you storing your recipes? I would love to know as well.
Because, I've got my modern iteration now of scrapbooks. So they're those, how do I describe them? Those plastic ones that you buy from Officeworks, and they're sort of plastic spiral bound, and they have the clear plastic sheets. They're fantastic. So I just rip it out of the magazine or out of the Qantas magazine's fabulous for that. They've always got really good stuff, and other mags as well, the Saturday Paper or wherever, The Age, your recipes too, Dani. And they, I put them in the clear sheets, and they're organised in the same way as my scrapbooks were as a kid. There's side dishes, there's, vegetable dishes, there's what would be called main courses, there's desserts, there's cakes, and I use them all the time.
I love that. All right, I promised we would get to salad, and let's do that.
Is this where you and I are we going to fight here, Dani, about this?
No, I don't think so, because I am a great appreciator of a well-dressed salad and pert leaves arranged with respect. So I feel like we are salad cousins. But I do feel that where if someone was cooking for you or making food for you, this is a place that they could go really wrong. But let's flip it to the positive. How could they go really right? What is a good salad in your mind?
Good question. I'm going to answer that. But first of all, I'm going to say if anyone ever wants to cook for me, I am going to eat what you serve to me with gratitude and with, tears of joy that I don't have to cook tonight. So let me just make that clear. No one ever has to be scared about cooking for me. I'll take it, whatever you've got. Vegemite on toast, I'll be totally happy. Look, I do have a bias when it comes to this, because I know that, and particularly with someone as wonderful as Ottolenghi, he and Nigella as well, and our darling, dear departed friend, Greg Malouf, and I cannot believe the news about him, about his death is just heartbreaking. But they've all elevated what you can do with a combination of vegetables or salad leaves, and so I don't want to downgrade their great ingenuity and also innovation and just how they've lifted that whole scene, if you like. But for me, whenever I eat, I always do want just a very simply prepared, beautifully selected series of leaves, a combination of soft and crunchy, of bitter and sweet, a really good combination of excellent salad leaves that have been well picked and, washed and dried, although we can talk about that too. And then just with a beautifully balanced vinaigrette. There's really, for me, there's often very little that can surpass how lovely that is, how that's just a perfect plate of joy for me. And, that'll be enough with cheese on toast sometimes.
Oh, yes. One of the great quotes about salad landed in my ear very recently from Philippa Sibley, one of Australia's great chefs. She makes a beautiful salad. She's fierce about dressing in the right amount of it, but she talked about the overdressed salad as being like a Labrador humping your leg as it goes through the dining room. And I think, yep, that's it. You need just enough and not too much.
That's right. And look, and it's a tricky thing because I can be a fan of a more elaborate salad that has, lots of other things in it. And I've had those over the years and will again, and I've really enjoyed them. But it's a tightrope act. I mean, I don't think people realise that you're actually really up on a tightrope there, and one false step, that one ingredient that just makes it too much, or that contradicts, the other lovely, more subtle elements in it, and can bring the whole thing down. And you've tumbled off and you're in the abyss. I mean, no one dies; it's just a salad. But I take it that seriously.
Oh, I know you do. And, Virginia, I'm really looking forward to continuing with a bit on the side. It really is a very delicious book. I will attempt to make a pepper steak and not set my kitchen on fire at the end of it. No,
don't, because I tried to, charge Andrew for, the rebuild, and he wouldn't pay. So, I mean, you won't have any joy either if you set your kitchen on fire. You're on your own.
I don't see that in my insurance policy either. So, yeah. We're on our own there. But thank you so much for bringing us into your world with this book and with this conversation. It is, a real delight to have you on Dirty Linen. Thanks so much, Virginia.
I'm a big fan of the podcast, so I'm really thrilled to be here. And thanks for reading it. I hope everyone loves it. It's written to bring you all a bit of joy, so I hope it does.
Certainly will. Thank you. This is Dirty Linen, and I'm Dani Valent. We air the issues that the hospitality industry finds hard to talk about, hearing from different people with unique perspectives. We want to hear from you as well. If you have something that needs to be said about a topic, get in touch so we can include your perspective. Contact us at dirtylinenat deepintheweeds.com.au or hit us up on Insta at Dirty Linen Podcast. We can't wait to hear from you.
This